I'm Brian Kester, born and raised here in Stilwell, Oklahoma, and we currently live, my wife Chelsea, live in Tahlequah. I was raised in Stilwell, went to Stilwell schools, graduated Stilwell High School in 1997, and then I actually joined the National Guard in October of 1996. Went to basic training just immediately after graduation, came back, ended up getting called up in 2003, and we made a trip to Iraq, spent a good part of 2004 and a little bit into 2005, came home and began my tour of the career that I've chosen, now the ministry that I'm in, and it's just been a blessing. Got into the funeral business about 23 years ago, started working for David Roberts, Sheldon McGletto down at Roberts Funeral Home here in Stilwell, and went to school and got licensed. Got a job in Tahlequah and began to explore my career. Over the past 8 years, I've been the manager of the group of Legacy Funeral Group that they own, which is Roberts Funeral Home here in Stilwell, Hart Funeral Home here in Stilwell, Hart Funeral Home in Tahlequah, and the Roberts and Hart Funeral Home in Westville. Managed those for the past 7 to 8 years, and just decided that it was time to move out on my own and quit fighting the corporate world and do what this business is called for, and that's to bring the ministry to the people. I view this as a ministry. That's the way I approach it, and that's just the way I'm going to do it from here on out. So in growing up in my later teens, I began to feel like the Lord was calling me to preach for a while, and I ran from it and kind of went into it, came back out of it, ran from it. Finally, about 10 years ago, there was a church north of Tahlequah. They needed a pastor, and I'd preached there a few times and finally had taken that position. Felt like the Lord had called me into that church, and the course of being at that church for 9 years, and I left that church in April of 22. That's when I began to see, as I was at that church, the Lord was showing me, I'm calling you into ministry. It's not necessarily always called to preach. It's a call to ministry. And He was showing me, because I was preaching funerals more than I was preaching anything else. People were coming to the funeral home and they needed a preacher. They needed somebody to do the service. They believe in God. They have good intentions, but they just don't have a home church. And I filled that gap, and I began to see what the Lord was trying to tell me is, hey, your congregation is larger than you know. And that's where I began to realize that in this business, this is the ministry and the work if we allow the Lord to guide our life and do what He has and His will. Growing up, watching my dad, and Dad was a member of the city council. He was a part of the Kiwanis Club. Of course, he was the principal of the high school. We went to every football game, basketball game. You know, and I grew up in this community, being a part of the community, knowing generations of people just because of who my dad was. Though they were much older than I was, I've known them my whole life just because of that fact. And watching him be a part of the community and do the things that he did in this community and be such a pillar, it just inspired me to come back, and that's just feel like it's God's timing, and here I am back at home, and I'm happy to be home.